Well, there's going to be a bad ending. I wouldn't call it a policy mistake. The mistakes have already been made. And now we're at a point where we're like, okay, how do we get out of this? And, I hate to use cliches, but, between a rock and a hard place is probably as good as any. So the rock is a recession at best, maybe something worse, something more like a global liquidity crisis. The hard place is inflation, worse than what we're seeing already. Those are the Fed's two choices. This notion of a so-called soft landing where, we can raise interest rates a little at a time and get inflation under control, but keep the economy going. That's not going to happen. We're either going to have a recession or the Fed will at some point balk, not like what's going on in the markets, throw in the towel, in which case inflation will take off. Now, it's clear that Powell said, we're going to get rid of inflation. We're going to subdue inflation. We're not going to stop until that happens. By the way, if you look at what Powell actually said, you got to be a little bit of a geek and watch the whole press conference and take notes and get a transcript and all that. Not the FOMC statement. That's a little bit. I know the guy who writes those. It's a little cut and dried. But what Powell actually said, it was interesting. At one point, he said the U.S. economy is in great shape. Worse to that effect. But that was pretty much exactly what he said, which is nonsense. It's not in great shape. People ask me, are we going to have a recession? And my answer is we might be in a recession right now and not even know it. U.S. growth, talk about the U.S., but Canada, EU, Japan, and others are not much better. We could be facing a global recession, including China, but just focusing on the U.S. Because that's the Fed's sort of territory. First quarter growth was negative 1.5%. So we have that. We have the Atlanta Fed GDP estimate of second quarter growth. Second quarter's not over. We've got a few more weeks, and we won't know the actual number until late July. But they have a pretty good track record. It's not perfect, but it's probably the best tool out there. And they're showing second quarter at 0. Well, where I went to school, negative 1.5 plus 0 equals negative 1.5. In other words, you're going to have a decline in growth for the first half. Based on where we are now. Now, things are getting worse, so that 0 could tip into negative, in which case you could have 2 consecutive quarters of declining GDP, and that is the definition of a recession. So my point being, we might be in a recession already. We'll find out later this year, but the data right now certainly points in that direction. So Powell saying the economy is great is nonsense. What he said, if you look at all of his other forecasts, he said, by the end of the year, we could be looking at 4.2% unemployment, 3.5 to 4% interest rates, and, kind of 2.7% inflation. You're like, wait a second, inflation is 8.6 today. How do you get to, 2.7, number one? And then what about rising unemployment and higher interest rates? How do you reconcile those things? He said all three of those things. But what state of the world could make those things come true? There's only one, which is a recession. A recession would do it. A recession will raise unemployment. Higher interest rates will cause the recession. And the recession will cause inflation to go down. So in effect, Powell is saying we're going to have a recession. And this is why Wall Street reacted the way it did. Wednesday afternoon, it rallied. But that's just algorithms and short covering and some technical factors. Thursday, it sank like a stone. But that was people getting a good night's sleep, waking up and say, wait a second, he just told us we're going to have a recession. And my point is, not only is he right, we may be in one already. Inflation, prices go up, so we understand that, or maybe put differently, the value of your money goes down. You don't get as much for your money, same thing. But inflation, broadly speaking, has two causes. One is called, not to get too technical, but it's called cost push. This comes from the supply side. So there's a shortage of oil. And we've got a financial and economic war going on between Russia and the United States. The U.S. really started, but U.S., EU, Canada, Australia, Japan versus Russia. That's obviously disrupting supply chain, cutting down energy supply, causing the price of oil to go up, et cetera. So that's coming from the supply side. And you're exactly right. The Fed can't drill for oil. The Fed can't plant wheat. The Fed can't make semiconductors. So they can't do anything about this. And the supply chains are breaking down. They were breaking down before the war in Ukraine, but Ukraine has made it worse. The other source of inflation is called demand pull. And this is when individuals, you, me, and all of our viewers and, everyday Canadians and Americans worry about inflation. We say, well, I'm just thinking about buying a refrigerator. Better buy it now before the price goes up, with a car, house, or whatever it might be. They're different, but they affect each other. When the cost push inflation from the supply side has enough effect, there's a tipping point or critical threshold in psychology. We say, maybe it is out of control. I better go buy some stuff. Then the velocity of money goes up and then you get inflation. So the Fed can't do anything about cost push. They can't do anything about the price of oil. And you're right about that. But they're looking at the demand side, saying, hey, if this supply thing goes on long enough, eventually the psychology will change and we'll get demand pull and behavioral. And that is really hard to change.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race. You're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dahn, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dahn.